Happy Friday, everybody. Getting ready to head into therapy. Had a few things that have just been ping-ponging around inside my head this morning. We saw the Politico article about the racist young Republicans and the horrific but totally unsurprising racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, threats of violence that they included in their group chat. We saw JD Vance say that these were kids and that boys will be boys. These people ranged in age from their mid-20s to their mid-30s, all of whom held professional positions within the Republican Party, including at least one person in the group who was a state senator, an elected official. And then the following day, we saw a report of a staffer in the office of a United States congressman, a member of the House of Representatives, who on his bulletin board behind his desk, visible on a Zoom call, had a United States flag that contained a swastika. And that same day, the day after the Politico report, we saw reports that the White House is going to trim the U.S. refugee program down to the bone to keep out all of these pesky brown people coming in from all over the world. It's going to favor English speakers. It's going to favor Europeans and South Africans and Europeans who disagree with the migration policies of their home countries, letting in brown people. And I also wanted to mention that Donald Trump has murdered 27 Venezuelans in acts of our war crimes, basically state-sponsored terrorism. Donald Trump has murdered 27 Venezuelans without any due process whatsoever in his 5 boat bombings. Bombing fishing boats with no due process, no evidence, no nothing. Just pointing at them and saying, that's a drug boat and those are cartel drug smugglers, and that's supposed to be enough. And he has authorized the CIA to engage in covert actions on the ground inside of Venezuela. Congress hasn't authorized any of this. Congress hasn't declared war against Venezuela. But yet Donald Trump is out here squawking every single day about where's his Nobel Peace Prize. No one ever in the history of the world has ever deserved that prize more than him. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Marco Rubio also murdered a 2-year-old little boy in Myanmar. I saw a report this week about a refugee camp in Myanmar, a country that's engaged in a civil war. And the residents of that refugee camp were receiving food aid and medications through the USAID program, which Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Marco Rubio eliminated with no notice, clawing back its entire $6 billion annual budget, and the food aid stopped. And one father in a refugee camp in Myanmar watched his thriving 2-year-old little boy waste away and starve to death once that food aid came to an end. Meanwhile, we're sending $40 billion to Argentina for a bailout when Argentina is now selling to China all of the soybeans that China used to buy from the United States, bankrupting thousands of our farmers who have yet to be bailed out. And that was self-imposed because they all voted for that, knowing that Donald Trump did that to him during his first term. So that's the stuff that goes through my head while I'm driving. And so I needed to vomit that out before I walk into a therapy appointment so I can just clear that shit out of my brain. Be careful at the protest marches tomorrow. I guess a few red state governors have, like Virginia and Texas, are deploying National Guard troops to the No Kings protest marches tomorrow because, as I talked about earlier this week, DHS and the FBI put out a security bulletin that they sent to every single state and local law enforcement agency across the entirety of the United States, describing No Kings protest marchers as domestic violent extremists and terrorists, and saying that these marches are providing cover for domestic terrorism. At least one member of Congress has said that these marches are simply to appeal to and appease the terrorist wing of the Democratic Party. The Speaker of the House said that people who show up to these marches tomorrow are from the pro-Hamas, pro-Antifa, Marxist wing of the Democratic Party. These people are so fucking stupid. They don't even know what these words mean. And then Carolyn Leavitt described everyone, White House press secretary, she described everybody who's going to show up to these marches tomorrow as terrorists, Hamas, and on and on and on and on and on. And then, you know, Trump's entire presidency is nothing but an abuse of power. And a couple of days ago, he announced from the Oval Office that he's going to use the IRS to go after the left-wing donors, left-wing organizations. That's part of what Richard Nixon was getting impeached for. He didn't announce any of that publicly, but he was ordering the IRS to go after people on his enemies list. He didn't do it publicly. Donald Trump's just announcing it from the fucking Oval Office. And Secretary of State Scott Bessent earlier this week said that the assassination of Charlie Kirk was a domestic 9/11 moment, meaning that Charlie Kirk's murderer was an American as opposed to 9/11 with Middle Eastern terrorists. And so he was going to use the full power of the Treasury Department in a 9/11 type response to go after left-wing groups and the funders of left-wing domestic terrorism and go after the people who funded Charlie Kirk's assassin. Charlie Kirk's assassin didn't have any funding. The gun that he used was a gift from his grandpa. It was free. There's no evidence linking Charlie Kirk's assassin to any left-wing anything or any right-wing anything. He appears to have been apolitical and just thought that Charlie Kirk was a dick. On that point, he was right. Didn't give him the right to assassinate him. That should never happen to anybody. But there's no evidence connecting him to anything or anyone on the left or any left-wing organization or any funding from left-wing groups. This entire administration is just an abuse of power in furtherance of Donald Trump and Stephen Miller's goal of converting this country to single-party rule. The Republican Party controls everything from coast to coast, especially at the federal level. That's their goal. That's their goal. And to make the United States a whites-only nation where women are completely subjugated to the wills of not even mediocre white men like the dickless naked mole rat Stephen Miller. Okay, thanks for listening. I'll see you guys after therapy. Have a great Friday. Be safe this weekend.